Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Nova Drift. This is a asteroids-ish shooter set in space with roguelike elements, and I don't really know how I feel about it in the long run, to be honest. So let's just shut up and talk about it, shall we? First thing I'll point out is that the PC version seems to run okay. I had some frame rate drops while I was recording this footage, but I don't recall seeing any while I was actually playing the game. It's locked at 60 frames, so I couldn't see that ultra smooth 240 FPS motion. But that's okay, I don't got a problem with that. It runs absolutely fine when it's locked at 60. So, as I said before, this is a asteroids style shooter. You have a thrust control, which means you can only move in the direction that you're pointing, and you change the direction you're pointing. And you can also fire in the direction that you're pointing. And every time you defeat an enemy, they drop like little upgrade tokens. You pick up enough of them up, you can upgrade, and you can do things like pick out gear. And once you've got all your gear picked out, you can then take upgrades, which are things like extra fire rate, extra damage, extra things like having charged shots, having more shots, just all the usual stuff you'd expect from a roguelite shooter like this claims to be on the store page. But there's one other thing that this claims to be on the store page, and it kind of confuses me. It is, like, let me just read the first paragraph from the About This Game portion of the store page to you. Nova Drift is a roguelite space shooter that melds a classic arcade experience with modern action RPG elements like theory crafting and deep player choice. Your ship rapidly evolves as you defeat enemies, allowing you to shape its abilities and weaponry to your desires in a matter of minutes. Unlike many ARPGs, which can absorb hundreds of hours of time, Nova Drift allows you to take a ship build from inception to execution in a single game session. Now, when I accepted the review code for this, after reading that paragraph on the Steam store page, I was thinking to myself, so they're gonna do things like leveling up, adjusting your stats, giving you extra really cool loot, giving you abilities that you can upgrade, and doing stuff like that, right? Nope. The only thing they let you do is pick 3 different pieces of equipment: your body, your shield, and your weapon. And then you can upgrade, which changes the parameters of these. So again, you can get things like extra shots, you can get things like better homing capacity, you can make it a charge shot. You can have things like little turrets drop and run around, and little AI drones run around and help you. And all the body types, weapon types, and shield types are significantly different. Everything from shields dramatically slowing down bullets that are coming at you, to weapons that you can charge up, but if you overcharge it, you die, to bodies that make you stand still to get a damage boost. Stuff like that. I will admit they're all thoroughly different, and for the first hour or so while you're playing through and trying all these out, it does have a lot of variety to it, but I have no idea where they get the ARPG idea from, because, man, if there's anything that the ARPG, whether it be Torchlight, Diablo, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, Titan Quest, any of those things do, if any of those things do anything for me, it's nothing that's in this game. I'm not entirely sure where they get off saying that on the store page. It feels weird and kind of feels like false advertising, or at the very least it feels like it's misleading. Because, again, the only thing you can really do in this game is upgrade, like, minor abilities or swap out major bits of gear, quote-unquote, although they aren't really gear, they're just, like, selections. So, you pick your weapon, you pick your shield, and you pick your body, which all do their different things, with your first 3 levels. Then, for the rest of the levels, you can upgrade for all those things I mentioned earlier. Further up you go, the more powerful you get. You can also re-roll a lot, so you have the ability to basically pick out whatever weapons and weapons or upgrades that you want. You also have the ability to change your gear, so if you don't like the weapon you've got, you can see what weapons they've got down below, and then you can just change them. But it definitely doesn't feel like an ARPG. I definitely don't feel like I'm playing that. I feel like I'm just playing a weird little space roguelite based on asteroids. Maybe with a little bit of Geometry Wars, especially with this presentation. While it's not like on a grid or anything like that, everything's kind of got that halo, glowy effect that Geometry Wars is pretty well known for. It does look pretty good, I'll give it that. But it definitely ain't an ARPG, I promise you that, son. So, we might as well talk about basically the overall gameplay loop. I already talked about everything that you actually do, but how does it feel? And you can get some pretty powerful weaponry and some pretty intense weaponry from time to time, like this bloody massive spray gun that just sprays fragments everywhere every time it makes an impact, or rail guns that have like 5-shot bursts that can all curve in and absolutely wipe a dude out. All sorts of little things like that. But here's the thing. The game's overall pool of upgrades and weapons and shields and bodies is actually really small, even when you start unlocking stuff, because by the time you get to like wave 50 or 60, and trust me, that won't take long, at least if you're as decent as me. The game's not terribly hard, but I haven't managed to win yet, I'll say that much, but I have managed to get pretty far each time. And I will say that when you're playing this, the overall upgrades that you start to pick up start to feel a bit similar, because there's simply very little in the way of upgrades that would be useful for the weapon that you're holding at the time. There's certain guns that fire off tons of like bullets at the certain guns that fire off tons of bullets at one time. That makes like add one projectile guns even more useless. There are certain things like improved projectile velocity, which is very useful for guns like the railgun, but not useful for guns like the flak cannon, which is like a shotgun. It's very short ranged. So you find yourself in a position where you can tell just by looking at the upgrades that the game decides to give you what will actually be useful for the weapon they decided, the weapon or the shield or the body they gave you at the very beginning of the game, right? So you basically know what upgrades you need to go for immediately, and they give you tons of things like rerolls in order to, like, they give you tons of things like rerolls in order to be like, hey, do you want to just pick a completely different set of upgrades? And considering that you can get 8 upgrades at one time, it means that you've almost always got a choice which is going to help you out, even if it's something simple like your shield regenerates 20% faster. So the upgrades just kind of blend into each other after a while, because once you've got a weapon and you know what it's good at and what upgrades will work for it, which isn't hard to figure out once you've been playing with a weapon for 5 minutes, you can just go for those same upgrades again and again and again and again and again, and eventually you'll just get really good at handling them and you'll be able to beat the game. And it's compounded by the fact that upgrades actually come in quite slowly. And I'm sorry, I don't mean upgrades, I mean unlocks, because when you finish the game, you'll be given like a certain amount towards the next unlock depending on your score. And even with something like 15 unlocks in 2 hours, I found myself not really being interested in what I had, because I'd already seen everything there was to see, and all of the new stuff was actually taking a while to actually show up in the loot pool. Even like a few games after I unlocked a new weapon, it still took that long to see it like in the initial or the change gear part of the upgrade screen when I was playing. So it just takes a while for the upgrade pool to have any real depth to it, and even then, I'm 2 hours in and I think to myself, okay, I've seen everything I need to see. I don't really want to play this anymore. And I'm not really sure what else could be done other than just adding more stuff to it to really help with this problem. So the game just ends up feeling a bit dull after a while, because you keep going for the same upgrades, you keep going for the same weapons, the ones you're comfortable with, because there are weapons in this game that I think to myself, I'll never have a particular use for. Like, there's one I tried out in this video that was like a bunch of like Cthulhu-style tentacles coming out of the front of my ship with not very much damage, very low range, and they were kind of obnoxious to use. So I just think to myself, okay, I'm never going to pick that again. And it's kind of the same with most of the weapons in this game. I'm not going to do that with the flak because it's too short range and doesn't give me the opportunity to get out of the way. I'm not going to pick up something like the Vortex Ball because you need to charge that up to get the most out of it. And if you hold it for too long, you start doing damage to yourself, which is a really bad idea in this game because the enemies do swarm in and they don't give you any quarter. You do want to be on your toes as much as possible. So I usually just go for things like Old Reliable I go for the railgun. I go for the spread shot. Sometimes I go for the salvo, depending on how many things I've got going for me at any one time. But there are some weapons that just feel useless. Shields and bodies don't have the same problem, mainly because all of the shields are useful in some way, and most of the bodies are useful. The Juggernaut body, well, not the Juggernaut body, the Juggernaut's not even an upgrade, but the body that basically lets you run into dudes non-stop, that doesn't become very useful by the time you hit like wave 60, because there's so many shots going about that focusing on a ram is a really bad idea. And again, it just comes back down to, there are some things that are just way better than others, and as a result, once you know what you're going for, it just makes the game a bit more dull, which is why I'm going to say, just add more stuff, please. Add more weaponry. Maybe buff the weaponry that isn't that good so that it actually stands a better chance. Add more stuff to do in the levels. Like, even most roguelikes know this. There's only a couple of, like, weird little things that come in every now and again. Like, like, trains that basically just have upgrade stuff in them. And black holes that send you just into higher difficulty areas for more rewards. That's basically all this game's got going for it. It even replays like the same bosses in the same order. So you're always going to go up against like the big ship that throws out the tentacle things. Then you're going to go up against the ship that's the big circle that fires lasers to the outside and then fires like plasma shots that you need to cross to the other side of the screen to get. Then you're going to go up against the red ship that just has a fuck off everything flying around it, which makes it really hard to damage. So it just gets boring after a while because you know what to expect. And that's kind of the main two problems with it. It's a roguelite where you know what to expect, and therefore it gets boring. So, yeah, I don't really know what to do to fix it, which is a shame because the actual gameplay and the combat overall is pretty well designed. The overall control of your ship and the thrust is great. Being able to do things like do a long thrust across the screen, turn right, and fire shots like a drive-by. And that's without, like, the upgrade that lets you fire off to the side so that you're always broadsiding or always firing out your ass. But they've got some good, like, physics and just feel in combat going on here, which depresses me that it just gets boring so quickly. Because after a couple of hours, I think to myself, I've seen everything I want to see and I'm not interested anymore. Which is a shame. I'm going to let you watch the rest of this footage, but that's my opinion, basically. The upgrades, the enemies, and, well, basically everything about the way the game's designed makes it predictable, which in a roguelike isn't particularly great, which means that I feel like I've seen everything there is to see and I don't really want to play it anymore, even with its satisfying skid around in space and shoot everything sort of gameplay that it's got going on. And, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it because, like, if it goes on sale for $5, maybe I would recommend it, but at its current price of like $20 US, no, that's probably $15 US, I apologize. It's Australian $21.50, but at that price, I find myself getting bored of it so quick that I don't think I'll come back to it again. So for something that you can play for like 5 minutes when you're waiting for something else to download, it would work great for that, but for something that you want to play even remotely seriously, eventually the upgrades being like very clearly well, not so much unbalanced, but just it's obvious which ones are old faithful and which ones are just ones that aren't going to work for most situations. And the fact that the game's got very little to actually surprise you with after the first few runs at least means that it just gets really repetitive really fast, and therefore I find it hard to recommend. Maybe they'll fix this up by the end of early access, but I'm not going to claim to know, personally. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I've got to say on it. I'll let you watch the rest of this gameplay. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.